All right, it's another day on road to 2023 on Symfoni. I'm Victor Irele, welcoming you to the program. In today's edition of the program, we'll take on another presidential candidate and look at his take on some national issues and, of course, how he intends to turn the tide in Nigeria, given the opportunity to lead this country in 2023. That will be our focus. And, of course, the African Action Congress presidential candidate, Omoyele Sowore, is our guest today on the program. The usuals are also on the program. The INEC updates, situation in Naira State, talking about the governor banning campaigns in schools, gradually spreading. We'll look at all of that. And then we come to you out there having an opportunity of being part of the show as always. But tonight, like I said earlier, I'm not alone on the program. It's my pleasure to have his maiden outing on this platform, the presidential candidate of African Action Congress, who in 2018 formed this political party on which platform he ran for the 2019 presidential election and came fifth in that election. Of course, there are some big wigs that he did better than. Once again, in March this year, he declared interest to run once again for the presidency of the country, and on June 9th, he won the presidential ticket of his party unopposed. I'm talking of no other than Omoyele Sowore. Good to have you on the platform.
Thank you for bringing me.
Good evening. Of course, do remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Symfoni. And don't forget to hit the notification bell. And just to acknowledge that we've been joined live from Gambia. James is joining us from Gambia. James, good to have you. Thank you very much, James. Thank you. NS is also joining us from the US. NS, good to have you. It's always a pleasure. Don't worry. It's always a pleasure having you, NS, the most prominent female voice that joins us on the program. We appreciate you. And of course, Obi Oji is also joining us live from the US. Obi, good to have you. Thank you very much, Obi. We appreciate you for joining us as always. Of course, we are going to tweak our run order as usual. You know our usual run order, but we are going to tweak it so that we want it to be as explosive as possible and as engaging as possible. So, you know how we do it, but for today, we will turn it around and go to the main focus. Let's go on a short break with that insert from the town hall meeting that he was a part of, and then we hit the ground running. right, welcome back. That was one of the town hall meetings that he attended. But lately, we've seen situations where some organizers, whether town hall meetings or debates, have tended to concentrate on some political parties while looking away from others and probably saying that others are too small to be invited. How do you feel with developments like this?
Thank you for bringing me once again to the show. I have experienced it before. In 2018, 2019 campus, I was excluded also by the people who were managing the debates, the Nigeria election debate group. And we actually took them to court to force upon them our rights to participate in this debate as long as we are candidates participating in the election. But unfortunately, the judge not gave the judgment on our request, and we had no option than to engage in some protests, but it didn't work. In fact, at that time, the chairman, the CEO of the Channels TV, was the chairman of the election debate. I don't know if it's still there now. We took the fight to his office in Lagos, his studios, and protested. So what they're doing now is not new. They want to. This is part of the conspiracy we are talking about within the Nigerian political system, where they railroad Nigerian people in the direction of people without ideas and steer them away from people with ideas. What you do in advanced democracy, or any democracy for that matter, is to provide opportunities for everybody to engage with the public. And then over time, based on the response of the public, with the polling sometimes, or most of the time, you can reduce the number. You do that in primaries in the US. You have up to 10 candidates on the stage and engage for 2 or 3 hours. And some, after their first performance, will not even come back when they look at the feedback. So at that point, you can be said to be fair. In this case, there are 18 political parties because their excuse in 2019 was that there's 70 something political candidates and they don't have a stage to fit all of them. What they then did was to poll the public to see who they want to listen to. And when they carried out the polling, that's 2018, 2019, a lot of people preferred myself. You know, in the polling they did, I kept coming up 3, 4 places and they were saying they wanted 4. But what they did in that regard was to go for people who did not win in the polls because they targeted me. People like OBS and the city fell were behind me. They did it last Sunday again with the Rise TV, CDD debates or town hall series they called. In their own Twitter advertised poll, they said I was number 5, which I doubt very much that on Twitter, someone like Kwakwaso would defeat me on Twitter. Because I have 816 organic followers, 830 something like that followers. I'm not sure exactly, but more than 800,000. Kwakwaso is like 262. You probably bought half of them. I don't see him as someone who is. So when Tinubu bailed out on them, they went for Kola Abiola, who garnered 6.5% of the votes on the poll that they did on Twitter. I had 20 point something percent. So it shows you directly why they had started rigging up the election in advance. They're afraid of ideas, and I know that these things were packaged so that not only are they afraid of the kind of things I would say that will steer the public in my direction and my ideas, but they're also afraid that I will challenge the so-called front runners. Because I've met some of them at debates, at events, and completely took them to task on their records. They couldn't defend it. So these are the conspiracies that have become dominant now. And we just heard as of today that the NEDG is going to start its own series campaign next few days. They also have not invited me, and two candidates have already indicated that they will not be participating in debates anymore. Tinubu, I knew he won't, so I had nothing to say or offer. And Atiku seems to also be steering away from debate. Peter Obi has also now threatened not to participate in debates if Tinubu and Atiku don't show up. So these are who have been in position of authority and power and failed spectacularly in their callings and in their positions. I want to challenge them. That's what they call it, debates, right? You debate ideas, you debate records, and then you speak to the people. And then it's up to the public to choose who they want to vote for.
Left to you,
Yes.
would you want debates ahead of elections to be made mandatory? Because we've had people argue
It
that
should be. It should be. I believe that any serious country, especially countries like ours, should not allow anybody to pull out of those important. So democracies or elections are not by them. It's a series of activities that leads to that day that makes it unique. The moment you frustrate those opportunities and you kill all the parameters that help the public to decide who they want to vote for, then you are not conducting elections, you are conducting selections.
Okay, let's come back a little bit home. Recently, the federal government, ASU, had issues after 8 months of strike. ASU called off their strike, and then ASU resumed work, only for them to see the federal government pay them half salary, and they've just been crying blue mother. For you, is this the right way to go in trying to resolve the issue in the education sector, knowing exactly that we lost 8 months of an academic section, almost a year, and where we are almost back to the trenches again?
So, I want you to be clear about two things. One is that ASU never actually went out on a strike. The strike continued. They were just obeying technically court order that says go back to work. So there's a difference between going back to work and going back to class, right? And ASU lawyers know how to help them interpret this kind of laws. The second aspect of it that we must understand, I think, and this has been a prominent way of handling elections too. I think the government don't want students to come back to classes because of the elections. One, students are on campuses, they are more likely to organize and support candidates of their choice. And campus environment provides a prominent space and a legitimate space for them to debate, discuss, and organize for candidates. The second aspect of so that then means that by the time all this is resolved, elections are practically over. So I think it is political to keep ASU out of the classroom. The second aspect of it is the hatred for education. Right? This regime, this is not the first regime. I was a student union leader in the University of Lagos, and in the 90s, it was the same way. There's always this poking of the bear by the government, always ensuring that they go out there to provoke us to go on strike, so that we do not have an academic calendar system that works, for young people. And what do I mean? They go out of there. They've improved the strategy to the point that, at a point, it was what they use as a segue into buying licenses to own universities. Atiku got a university license during ASU strike. Obasanjo got his Bail university license, as a result of the crisis in the education sector. And I have said this, and this is more deeply philosophical, and I hope people believe it, that this kind of political class we have prefer uneducated and ignorant people than those who are, because if Nigeria were to have the kind of standard education you have in other places, some of the people governing us would not be able to do so, because well-educated people. So there's a difference between being educated and being literate. Well-educated people do not have accepted some of the kind of leaders we have. They don't have to raise a finger. but the kind of education they provide is, that fast food type of education. They just rush you through the system, get out, you're looking for what to eat, of a job, and at the end of it, you become very vulnerable to the kind of mediocre governance that is running Nigeria. That's a philosophical aspect of it that people should not ignore. Because not only are they doing this to higher institutions, they're also doing it to primary schools and secondary schools. They, even though they might have some academic calendar, students who go to the schools have no teachers. A lot of them don't have teachers. There are over 20 million out of school kids. You have to be the enemy of your country in an oil producing country to hate education so much that 20 million students are out of school. But I did my research, and there are only 5.2 million kids in secondary schools in Nigeria.
So you mean that the number is more than what you have been
The number of
projected?
kids that are in school is just about 25% of the number of kids that are out of school. So let's assume that secondary school students are 5.2. Well, that's from the GSS 1 to SS3. Only 5.2 of them are in school. All the students in our university, there are only 1.7 million. So university is a secondary school and not up to 10 million people in those very crucial educational institutions. They're not up to it. Sometimes I use that, not sometimes, I use that to question even INEC figures that over 40% of voters are students. Because you have 93 million voters. The number of students in our higher institutions or secondary school are only about 7 million. If you are going to be 18, you have to be in SS1 to 3. Mostly students in SS3 are not even up to 18 years. So where do you get the figures from? Well, maybe you could argue that people who registered and claim they are students are these numbers. But I think it's all manipulative. If you look at the real figures and the figures that they put out there for statistical reasons. So I have not done my research for primary schools. So if you have only 10 million people in primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions, and you have 20 million kids out of school, you are in trouble for the future. There's no question about it. You are just setting yourself for a future of crisis, of crime, of lack of order and peace. You can't escape it, except something is done now urgently. And that's why I have proposed, and I still do propose in my manifesto for free education, that kids, we have to rapidly bring these kids back to the classrooms. And the classrooms can be physical or digital, physical or virtual. And I've proposed this many times that we can start sending our children to school without physical classrooms through digital or virtual opportunities that are now being provided by technology.
But given the cost of data and our internet penetration, do you think that
We actually have
enough?
decent internet penetration. I think over 100 million Nigerians have access to internet now, almost, as far as I'm aware of.
Rural communities.
But rural communities are not doing badly. The way to do this is to use the companies, cable companies, to help out. There's the rural communities we are talking about. It's virtually no rural place I went to in 2019 that didn't have Star Times, GoTV or DSTV. We can turn one of those channels to educational classrooms or even mobile phone. If, regardless of where you are in Nigeria today, I won't say the entire country, there is no way you need to watch a live match from the UK, from England, the English team, that you can't. So, and those are internet pipelines. Most people don't know. That's internet. It's just happened to me. A different kind of internet. So, if I want to do a live show, I wanted to do a live classroom, I can use YouTube. You understand? And project it on a big board and teach students. It's so interesting. I know most of them don't have digital. They're not digital thinkers, and they don't belong to the digital generation. It's so interesting that we can do it in a way that we can even talk to countries around the world to allow our kids to be taught on the curriculum of their kids. So a child in Nigeria can go to an English classroom, even though they're tired like grammar. You know, these are technological ways of training. And if you doubt this, I was talking about this like even in 2019, and people were making fun of. If you doubt this, look at what COVID-19 did to the world. My kids went to class for almost 2 years without leaving the house. They were bored to death, no doubt. And I have a friend in Abuja who said his kids were also attending classes in the UK. So what's a big deal? And I'm sure there are a lot of countries around the world who would like to. In fact, it expands educational opportunities better than what we have now. Considering that all day long you can go to the French classroom, you can go to the German classroom, and kids have capacity to learn a lot more than adults. If I learn a new language now, it would probably take me another 5 years to do this. If I bring, if you take your kids to the US in 3 months, they won't understand the accents anymore because they have a propensity and their brains are very powerful to retain and learn better than adults do.
Lest I forget,
Yeah.
if you are the president, how will you deal with the issue of perennial ASU strike and deal with it once and for all?
It's investment. It's you need to invest. See, I was in the University of Lagos in 1992 or thereabout when ASU first proposed the idea of funding. And what were they asking for at that time? They were asking for, I think it was 1.9 billion naira in the early 90s. Jega was the ASU president at that time. In fact, when they were holding a meeting at the University of Lagos, DSS surrounded the place. We mobilized students and drove them away so that they could get out without getting arrested. So at that time, Nigerian government said that was Babangida said they don't have money to give to us. They don't. But it was about that time that the Gulf War happened, and what we later learned was that $12 billion was stolen from the excess crude money that we got from the Gulf War, and they were just asking for 1.2 billion naira, not dollars. So if they had just dedicated $1 billion from the Gulf War to that, it would have solved the problem for maybe the entire 90s. And now that's 1.3 billion naira that they stubbornly refused to invest at that time has now become 1.3 trillion. I mean, 1.1 trillion naira they're asking for now. And you are still saying, no, we don't have it. But here is the truth. We have over 150 billion naira for the Accountant General Federation, right? We have $1 million for Afghanistan as aid, right? We have money to buy SUVs for the government of the Nigeria Republic, right? So we have several other investments made to help people, corporate welfare. The Dangote refinery, you heard about it, right? He was building it and he got to a place Dangote could not continue building the refinery. The Nigerian government put aside $2.5 billion and invested in the refinery, private refinery. If you divide that into two and you give ASU half, this strike is resolved for a very long time. And you get my point. Because the $1 billion now is 800 billion naira. If you are looking at the market value of our so-called currency, Naira, $1 billion. So if you add 500 million to it, ASU strike issue is resolved. 1.5 billion is what? At 800. We've resolved ASU strike. And ASU says that this amount of investment will end all strikes for almost a decade. We just want it even broken into 200 billion each and given out to them in 6 tranches. They are not even asking for bulk. But the country that can afford to invest in a private refinery that is not owned by the country, it's owned by private individuals, just donates 3 point something billion dollars and call it investment. The NNPC that is making this investment has not made any deposit into the federal account in the last 1 year. So I'm breaking this down to people who may not understand that this is deliberate. What is a deliberate policy to kill the educational sector, particularly tertiary institutions in the country? You know why? They don't send their kids to schools here. Even Buhari never sent any of his children to Nigerian universities that we know of, that I know of. They're always in, UK schools. He claims that some of them have been in school before he became president, but we know at least one that was in the UK school after he was president. The one that was flying the private jet to take photographs at one time. These guys are just enemies of progress, as we like to call them.
All right, one of the things that in the last 1 week has been in the public domain and has been dominating discourse is redesigning of the Naira.
Yes.
There have been all kinds of controversies for and against the redesigning of the Naira. What's your take on
I'm publicly opposed to it. It's useless. And I took it up immediately and said, this is just a scam. And since they started the discussion about redesigning the Naira has lost about 200 Naira, or close to it, in terms of value. So that shows to you that the response of the world to your proposal to redesign the Naira doesn't make any sense. I think what we should be talking about is the value of the Naira, not redesigning the Naira. As someone joked, if the Naira looks finer, looks aesthetically better, would bread recognize it as stronger? So it's one of their scam policies.
Why do you think it's so?
Well, what is it going to do if the value of the Naira is useless and you redesign it? The argument that kidnappers will not be able to transact in Naira because the what they have to be useless is nothing. If a kidnapper knows that you are using Naira, you are designing Naira, they also redesign their policies. Yeah. So what are you talking about? And the other argument was that there's excess money being hidden by politicians. We already know that politicians are closer to the CBN government or CBN officials than the poor people. The people that will suffer at the end of it, people who are going to queue up with 5,000 Naira trying to get the new Naira. They will create a new layer of market for extortion of the poor people. And because I was around when they redesigned Naira in the 80s, they didn't do anything. Why do you repeat the same mistakes, the same policies that have never worked before? So it's not something that will work. The politicians, the CBN officials, and everybody will get together and get their own first. The CBN will be driving the redesigned Naira to homes of politicians and taking out the old ones. They may not even take the old ones. So I have not seen any sense behind it. No.
All right, let's pause here and allow our brothers and sisters who are online to share their thoughts. Maybe they have a question, comment, observation to make based on his remarks. Let me start with James joining us from the Gambia. James, let's hear you. All right. Thank you, James. NS, let's hear from you.